get them to order books from us instead of somebody else. And there's so many towns about bookstores now.
Yeah.
Doesn't really matter where your bookstore is anymore.
That's true. Just about. Oh.
Oh, there's someone online already.
Huh?
So I went live. So.
How much time do we have?
Oh, we have 10 minutes, 12
Lots
minutes.
of time. Okay, great. Which one? Oh, no, but I do have other things. Not the writing. So you guys live here in Menominee, or everybody's a Menominee person? All right. Yeah.
No, I
No?
live in the Rice Lake.
Rice Lake, really? Oh, thanks for coming all that distance. Yeah.
And it's Andre.
Rob.
Rob.
Nice to meet you, and you must be
Emily?
Emily.
Corey.
Corey. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
And you are?
I'm Rob.
Rob.
Yep. Good to know. Yeah. So, no.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so I just my background. I've got 40 published books. About a dozen of them have hit the top of Amazon's bestsellers list. Those are my writing, or my hiking guidebooks that I do. I mainly write hiking guidebooks, but I also do writing guidebooks as well. And, a few other sort of things. I got a novel, a couple of kids' books, a book of poetry, and my lowest selling book of all time, unfortunately. And but that's okay. And I don't make most of my money writing, believe it or not. I make most of my money editing other people's stuff who are writing and getting published. And so I've got my own editing business, which I've had for 12 years now. 2011 it started, so it's almost 12 years. 12 years, yeah.
What type of editing? Because there is
yeah,
developmental editing and the line
all
editing.
of them. Yeah, it just depends what you need. Most people that come to me, though, probably don't need developmental editing. They just need some kind of a substantive edit where I go through and do proofreading and, make sure that they don't have any plotting errors and character arc errors, things like that. So they've already gone through a couple of drafts and they're just about ready to self-publish. They maybe need to do another draft or two before they actually go to that stage. A few people just, that's all I need to do is proofread their stuff and they're moving out the door. And then I also do self-publishing formatting for people and getting books uploaded and stuff to Amazon and other sources. So that's really actually where I make most of my money. But I always set aside time every day to write and work on my mainly my hiking guidebooks. And those are my lucrative books.
So where are you hiking in Wisconsin?
All over. I've got about half my books are in Wisconsin and Minnesota, and the other half are all national parks. So I'm really focused now on national parks. That's sort of the lucrative area to go with, which makes sense. There's how many people in Wisconsin? 4.5, 5 million, if that. And 14 million people go see Great Smoky Mountains every year. So I'm like, well, what are the chances somebody's going to buy a Wisconsin book compared to Great Smoky Mountains? Yeah. So I've kind of gone that route. But one day I'll retire and quit editing and quit writing hiking guidebooks, and instead will write what I really want to write, which is fiction. So yeah, and that's what today's thing is actually about. Mainly is fiction. So
What
if you write nonfiction, let me know. Do you write nonfiction?
I do not.
Okay, all right.
What type of fiction?
Primarily science fiction, literary, a little historical fiction. For editing, I edit all those areas. I don't do much romance. Most women authors who write romance prefer women editors. makes sense to me actually. So, you know, I'm not insulted that they don't send me their romance novels. But I actually get surprisingly a lot of fantasy novels. That seems to be the real trend. A lot of people are writing fantasy novels. And so, but science fiction and fantasy probably make up about half my editing work that I do. And then the rest of it's more contemporary literature, sprinkled with all the other genres, you know, children's. I get a Western every couple of years, believe it or not, to edit. It's fun to do. So I like Westerns, but nobody buys Westerns anymore or watches them on TV. I think. So, picture.
Hello.
So, hi, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Good. Grab a seat here.
I will.
We lost our.
Whoa.
What happens is this goes off.
If you go to your computer goes to?
Yeah, I think it did. So I might need to leave it up, I guess. So it's like I lost the screen. What's going on? So do you write fiction or nonfiction?
Poetry, and
Poetry.
I'm working.
Good.
I've got a children's book I want to start.
Awesome. That will work.
And this one is just the
Recovery.
first template. Oh, beautiful.
Restart.
As I paint. That's
I'll be here next month.
Oh, of the walls?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm excited to see it.
Adventures of Dragons and Trees.
Ooh,
Yeah.
fun.
Got my flyer out there. So.
Yeah.
It's gonna be
And somebody looked at the flyer and they go, "Are you writing a book? Or did you write the book?"
Some of your bookmarks are out there now, aren't they?
Yes, they
Yeah.
are. Mhm.
So the Drake bookmarks.
Yes.
It's exciting.
Yes. And I'm still at Acoustic Cafe too.
Oh, fun.
So we got other writers here, of course, because that's what it is.
Yeah.
Actually, I found an error in one of my poems.
Always find more.
Oh, yeah.
They're eternal.
Up to publish books.
I know, exactly. I'm just in good company.
So again. I had it set up before. It's weird.
Where's the remote? Let's.
Do we need to like go back? I've got
Yeah, but you have to
to review it. The signal.
There
There we go.
Nice.
All right, now we're set. Trying to get us started here. in just a minute. So thanks for coming, everybody. So yeah, great. And then once she gets going, we'll get rolling. Are we ready to go or?
We still have 4 minutes.
Oh, 4 minutes. Oh, okay. We
Like,
can be patient.
You can start reciting poetry.
yeah.
Sure.
Maybe it's minutes here.
Just gotta make sure it doesn't go off on me again.
Do you have book clubs here? Or no?
What was that?
Book clubs. Do you have a book club? Do you hold?
There's the Partners in Crime book club meets here on the third Tuesday
Mhm.
at 6:00, and then we have a No Pressure book club, which is no pressure for me because it's books I've read or
Yeah.
so that meets on the first Wednesday at 6 p.m. And so the next book we're reading is The Buddha in the Attic. And so it's by Julie Otsaku. It's a little book, but it's told it from the first person plural. So it's we. So it's the collective stories and experiences of women who came from Japan to America and then their life here. And yeah, so it's a great book. So we're supposed to read it during March during Women's History Month. So that's where that
You
one
have
came
that
from.
information online.
Yes, it should be on
It
our
should be.
website under the events.
So it's,
April 5th, I believe, is the
April 5th.
first Wednesday,
At what time?
6 p.m.
Yeah, I think we have all of our events at 6 p.m.
We try, yeah. Keep it
Between
consistent.
6 and 7. So
People
People
everybody
can
gets
get
off
home.
work and then we go.
Right. It's a good fit.
Is it too warm back here? Because I can turn on the air conditioning because it does heat up.
Yeah.
Would you like?
I'm okay.
You're okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Good.
So yeah, we may have to take off layers. When we were back here for book clubs, I was like, oh my god.
Mhm.
Sorry I didn't warn you.
Yeah.
Dress in layers. But yeah, I don't know if looks like there might be one person online,
Oh, great.
but we still have 2 minutes.
So just so everybody knows, we're gonna, after a few minutes, once I get through some introductory material, I'm gonna actually have everybody write something for a few minutes, and then that way we can go back and we can edit it a little bit. So we won't do too much editing. We won't edit each other's work. You know, I don't bring a red pen with me to go through and bloody up your paper. But the idea is just to kind of go through and have you read through your own work and say, okay, now this is what he's saying we should do. Do I have that or not in mind? Did I? You know, just to recognize it, so that way you can then, when you're going to writing your own stuff, your own material, and you're self-editing yourself, you can actually then go and say, oh wait, I shouldn't do that either. Most editors don't like that. Most, publishers don't want that. So most readers don't want it. That's really the question, is if a reader wants it or not.
I hear
Alright.
the bells tolling. So.
All right, so go ahead and start.
Yeah. Do you want to
Hey.
introduce yourself? Yeah.
I'd love to. Thanks. So I'm Rob Bignell. I'm the owner and editor of Inventing Reality Editing Service. We've been in business for about 12 years now. I've edited well over 1,000 authors. About 400 of them have gone on to publish either novels or nonfiction books or magazine articles or short stories that have appeared in publications, a few poems, children's books as well. So I've got quite a lot of experience. And prior to that, I was a newspaper and a magazine writer, reporter, and editor for many years, all over the country. So from between here to Iowa to Mexico, California, a couple of different spots. And then in addition to that, I write books. I was mentioning before, I don't want to post again, but I do publish books, and I've got quite a few of them that have topped off on the bestsellers list. And so I've done some writing guidebooks as well. And all of these have been pretty successful. Some of these have been out for about 10 years now or so, but a lot of the writing stuff is all the same, the advice they give. So the last time we had a workshop, which was about 6-7 weeks ago, we just briefly talked about the writing process that we could go through. And I see none of those people here. So I'll still be going through the writing process, or I was really bad. I don't know what.
They
Well, they
wrote themselves
probably
out.
at home, right?
Yeah,
So one
that's
and-
right. Yeah,
one and
exactly. So hopefully they'll come back with it. So the next step I told them that we would do is then talk about, well, once you've come up with your book idea and you've started working on it and you've got a draft written, now you need to start self-editing it or revising it and everything, which is the stages that we're going to talk about. And actually that takes me to the next step. This is what we looked at the last time, the writing process. And we said, well, you start off with brainstorming or coming up with an idea that you then probably outline the idea. Some people are pantsers, where they just kind of write by the seat of their pants, whatever comes out. And I gave my eloquent argument against why pantsing is a myth and why you shouldn't consider doing that, but instead should outline. And then you go to the drafting stage where you actually start turning your outline into a real draft. The draft is far from perfect, of course, so you start revising. And that's sort of where we're at right now, is the revising stage. And so that's what we're going to kind of focus on. What can you do to revise or edit your own material, whether it be poetry or short stories or a novel or children's books or even nonfiction, though my focus here today is going to be on fiction, since that's what most people are writing and are most interested in. Revising is really the challenging stage. I think brainstorming is easy. Every author's got 2,000 ideas in their head. And the question is, which one should I do first, right? And the outlining, some people skip it. Some people just do it in their head. Some people spend hours doing it on paper and are actually starting to write. And of course, drafting, everybody drafts. But then the question is, you start drafting and you're like, I don't like the way this is turning out, right? You imagine your short story is going to be, this great work of art like what Michelangelo made. And instead you've got this clump of clay in front of you and you're like, there's no way this thing's ever going to turn out how I imagined it was going to be. But actually, it can get to that stage through revising. And so that's what we're going to focus on here today is revising. I just kind of want to go over what are the things you look at when you revise, and then we'll take a break and actually write maybe a paragraph. I'll give you a couple of ideas to go with if you don't have any in your head, or if you do, just go ahead and write those. And then I'll kind of take you through each of these steps. When we talk about revising, we're looking at three basic, very broad areas. The first one, the obvious one most people always think of are what I call language arts class issues. And these are the things they focused on in school in 8th grade and 9th grade and in elementary school. How to spell, how to punctuate, how to capitalize, and to make sure you're using the correct grammar. Those first three things are pretty easy, right? But the grammar, of course, is always a big question. You know, when you're starting to use dialects of people, when do you want to use your own voice as opposed to using perfect school grammar? Or if you were in Britain, would you use the Queen's English, or would you write like people in your community, whether you're living in the East End or in Birmingham or Manchester, would you write in that kind of a dialect? So the grammar is a little more iffy on the question, but in general, we can all agree that there are lots of grammar rules you should follow, no matter what you're doing. Things like you probably shouldn't have dangling phrases. You shouldn't have mixed up clauses. You should use parallel structure. But I won't get into all that right now. Just the idea that those are the big language arts issues. The second thing, though, this is where we start getting a little more into the art of writing, right? The first thing is just what your teacher would mark up when you were in high school or middle school. But these are structural issues. And I'm looking at sort of the 5 general areas of fiction. You've got plot, right? What happens in the story. You've got characters, which are the people in your story. You've got the setting, which is where the story takes place. You have point of view, which is the perspective that the story is told from. Maybe it's told from a character's viewpoint, maybe the narrator's telling it, right? And then, of course, you've got theme, which is sort of what the meaning or message of the story is. And depending upon the author, you've got different approaches, which is the most important one. Based on the kind of story you're writing, certain elements are way more important than others. To give you an idea, in science fiction, setting is extremely important, right? Because you're creating, and same in fantasy as well, I should say, and in Westerns, because you've got a very definitive place where the story is taking place. And especially in fantasy and science fiction, you have to do a lot of world building to create that world and to make it real. That's not quite as important in something, say, as a spy thriller, where you can actually use a real place. But even their setting's important, right? James Bond stories always happen in the most exotic places, like Monaco, right? Or Paris or Hong Kong, right? Or Las Vegas. But, they never happen in small town Minnesota or small town Iowa, right? So setting's important there. Plots, obviously, it depends, again, on your genre and what you're trying to write. For example, in science fiction, which I added a lot of, some writers are just trying to create an interesting story that's got all these wonderful science fiction elements in it. We're off on another planet, we're fighting big insect bugs, and right, that's kind of like space opera science fiction. But a lot of science fiction is very theme-oriented, in which the alien creature or the world that they're on has some kind of metaphorical meaning. You find that a lot, for example, in Star Trek TV episodes, where everything's a metaphor, actually. It's really not a science fiction story. It's more like a morality play. But you put it in a science fiction setting because you can get away with it. A lot of authors today just use fantasy instead of science fiction because you have a lot more freedom. You can use magic, right? So anything can go. And a point of view is more of I guess I would say point of view is more of an academic thing to consider. It's something that writers have to really be serious about and think about, but it's really only people who are in academia who sit down and say, well, that story was written in second person and that was in third person omniscient, and trying to break it down like that. But what's important for you as an author is just to think about who can best tell this story. Who is the best person to tell it? To give you an example, The Great Gatsby, which everybody probably had to read in high school, right? Or you probably read it on your own. The main character of the story is not the narrator, but Nick Adams is his name. The main is Gatsby, is the guy. But Gatsby can't tell his own story because Gatsby is a tragic figure who can't see his own flaws and how he is, how he and the culture that he lives in of the 1920s that he's really excited about, all the partying all the time and all that. He just can't see that. So he can't tell his own story. But Nick Adams, an outsider from the Midwest, going over to, Egg Island, I think is where they're on, and he can see it. He can understand it. And he can report back to us the flaws of Gatsby. Other characters, it's not important to have a point of view. You can just have sort of an omniscient, godlike character tell the story. Like in a thriller, it's a really good character is the narrator. Just let the narrator tell the story, right? Uh-oh, we just lost the signal. I knew I should have clicked it again. Oh, we got lucky. Got it in time. All right, so then the next thing, the third thing after language issues and after the structural issues of a story would be style issues. And now this is where we really get into the artistry of writing. And this is the real challenge. Most of you as writers are really good at writing stories. You already know great plots and great characters, and you usually just instinctively know the right point of view because you've read so many darn stories already in your life, and you've already experimented and written, and you've probably studied them in school, in college, for example. So you really understand how to tell a good story. Well, the question is, do you have good style and craftsmanship, right? So, I mean, a guy like Michelangelo could probably point out this is what a good statue is, and he could explain to you. But he had a certain ability to craft that piece of marble into something that would stand for the ages. And so that's the challenge for all writers when you're revising your piece, is to be able to come up with style. And style can be broken down into three very general, broad areas. And there's a lot you can cover in each of these. One is diction. Diction simply is just the word choice that you use and how you arrange those words into sentences. Two is narrative drive. Narrative drive would be making sure your writing is tight and that it just keeps the story moving forward, that the story doesn't draw attention to itself. Instead, the reader gets caught up in the story because you're doing such a good job of moving the tale forward and creating increasing amount of suspense in it. And then the third thing is color. Most writers are actually really good at color. Color would be things like using description and it's like the first thing they have you do in school in creative writing class, write a descriptive paragraph, right? And then you did a great job at it, and your teacher told you were wonderful, and you started writing more and more, right? And so color is pretty easy for most writers, but a lot of writers kind of skimp it once they start getting bogged down into something big like a novel. They forget what color is all about. So color is good descriptive writing, and that can include imagery as well, things like similes and metaphors and so on. So we'll get a little more into each of those as we go on. And so what I want to do here before I get into the next stuff, which is, well, then how do you edit your piece, is I want us to actually go and just write a little piece, maybe for a couple of minutes, just 4 or 5 sentences, half a page tops. Try to write a fiction piece. And then we'll go through, and this is just a rough draft, obviously, right? So it should be full of errors in it, hopefully. No, maybe not. And then what we'll go through is we'll talk then about, well, then how do you edit that piece and how would you go through it? So to give you a topic, in case you're looking for some topics, let's see. Let's suppose that you are a man or woman, doesn't matter which, and you go back to your community where you grew up. You had moved away and not lived there for a long time. You didn't get along with your father if you were a guy, or didn't get along with your mother if you were a woman. Your father or mother have passed away. And so you move back to the community trying to kind of get a sense of who you are and what happened. And while there, you find and discover this dilapidated building. And you decide you're going to go and take it and remodel it and turn it into something gorgeous that you can live with. And while you're doing that, you're rediscovering sort of your roots in your town. So it's a really broad thing. It sounds specific, but there's so many directions. And I bet everyone can take.
This is mine that I'm just done.
Oh, awesome. If you have your own idea, like you're working on something, right now, or something you've always wanted to try, go ahead and do that instead. That's perfectly okay with me. Right? The idea is just to get everybody to write. everybody just a couple more minutes here. You, Joan? Let me just wrap it up with a sentence or two. It doesn't matter if you finished or not. The idea is just to have some stuff that's written that you can remember.
I don't know what's happening next.
Yeah.
Neither do I.
I know. So yeah, that's why we just go through the writing process, right? You should brainstorm an outline and then draft, right?
Yeah, because
Theoretically.
I've got the
So,
middle
but
of the
that's
book. I don't have the
Yeah.
ending or the beginning.
Right. Did anybody want to read their stuff for us, or is everybody like,
Sure, I'll
no
read it,
way,
I don't
I'm
mind.
not reading this draft?
Okay, let me get to my
What?
picture.
Yeah.
I'm narcissistic.
I'm narcissistic too. I don't like reading it. So whoever wants to go first.
Every once in a while, I'm going to click this, not because I'm trying to
I kinda
ignore
like
you.
it.
I kind of like mine too.
Okay.
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, well, why don't you go first? We'll
Okay,
start. We'll
sure.
go round robin. If you want to skip, that's fine.
They were the last people I expected to see in the store, but there they were, backs turned toward me, waiting at the checkout. I had options. They hadn't seen me. I could go unnoticed, avoid the awkward conversation. I continued past, giving myself time to think. I had been so surprised that my attention had been drawn away from the person I should have noticed. I didn't catch the nervous glances, the sweating brow. No, my attention had been drawn away. But as I approached the checkout, my resolve firm to face the awkward conversation. All that resolve soon melted into anxiety and panic when I saw the gun. The real gun pointed at the ashen-faced checkout girl. My friends still hadn't noticed me. Nobody move. I'll kill her. I'll kill her.
All right. That's good conflict.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
you're painting the picture there.
Awesome. All
Um,
right, let's hear yours.
all right. You're not sure how long it will be until sunset. That's part of the problem with mandatory shutdown. It takes as long as it takes. System updates determined by an empty building. The living demands of dying gods. The fans start whirring in your brain, a sure sign that you're thinking too hard. Then you stop. Let that go. Clear the mind that only feels like it's half yours. You push yourself up. Your feet press into the thick moss, and you watch the puddles begin to form through green vegetation. Your toes are starting to rust. The sky is visible through rough holes in the ceiling, and you frown up at it, ignoring the blinking defunct advertising on the edges of your vision.
Awesome. What was that line about the gods?
Living demands of dying gods.
I like it. It's a great line.
Nice.
Can I
Yeah.
skip it?
Sorry, I couldn't remember, but
Can I skip?
yeah, absolutely.
Skip it.
Yeah.
So I'm not reading it.
That's right. You don't have to.
Okay. I
Okay.
have only like 2 or 3 sentences.
Sure. Oh,
that
that's fine.
words are missing.
Just want everybody to feel
Thank you.
comfortable. So if you want to skip, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Cool.
I'm picture book, children's book.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's kind of what mine
Sure,
is
sure.
too. Yeah.
So this is not, it's just more about